which is what I wanted.
That's great. Now you've got a new book that's just come out, and you've gone to a different self-publisher for that. So talk a little bit about why you made that decision there. Port Royal is published with Lulu, right?
No.
No? Well, tell us a little bit, or Book Surge. Book Surge, right?
Lightning Source.
Lightning Source. I knew I'd get it right if I kept guessing a little bit. So why the change from Author House to Lightning Source?
It was about dollars. I wanted to produce a book cheaper, and I think I found that with Lightning Source. Lightning Source is a printer. It's not a publisher. I'm the publisher. I started my own publishing company, bought the ISBN numbers, sent the files in, and Lightning Source is just printing them for me. So I maintain total control. But the price is very, very affordable. I can go into a bookstore, and typically they want a 60-40, 60% to you and 40% to them. And with Author House, I was very limited as far as how much of a discount I could give them. And I needed a little bit of room, a little bit of leeway to give a bigger discount. And Lightning Source provides that for me.
Well, that's great. Yeah, if you're watching at home and you've got questions about self-publishing your book in contrast to going through a traditional publisher like Random House, Simon & Schuster, Time Warner, the big major publishers, a big difference between self-publishing and traditional publishing, right, is distribution. And you just mentioned, you know, with self-publishing, you got to carry that book into the store yourself and actually set up, whether it's a 60-40 or an 80-20 or whatever you manage to negotiate with the individual store owners. The books actually going into the stores are distributed from the authors themselves, whereas with traditional publishers, you know, they have a sales force and distributor that does all that. So, Christy, tell us a little bit, what kind of advice would you give to somebody watching this program who's sitting there going, okay, I got a book, and I don't know what I want to do with it. I've heard about these different self-publishing options. I'd like it to be maybe published with a traditional publisher. What advice would you give to somebody who's on that fence right now?
Go to your local bookstore. Find out where your local authors' writing groups meet and try to get invited to one of those meetings. It's just critical to network with other authors. It's also critical to get input from other people and have editing assistance from your peers to get your book into the absolute best shape that you could possibly get it into. I don't think there's an author that I have met yet who was 100% happy with their final manuscript. There's always changes. There's always, oh, if I had to do it again, I would do this a little differently, or I would lay this out a little differently. Get all of those ideas and all of those critiques prior to submitting it to the publishing company, so that when you do have your product, you have absolutely the best product that you can possibly produce. You're proud of what you've produced, and it's going to represent you in the absolute best light.
Well, as you can see, I don't know how well you can see this at home. Maybe we could bring up this other camera that's a little bit closer on me here so you can actually see inside the book. But as you can see in Christy's book, you know, you actually have images of the dogs and different photos and such in the actual book itself, combined with text. And so you really put this thing together quite well. I mean, this was a lot of work that you put into this.
Thank you.
Talk a little bit about the process. I mean, it's a great looking book. It looks as good as any book published by a traditional publisher. You heard that here first from Stacey.
Thank you very much.
I'm serious. The book looks fantastic. So talk a little bit about the process of how you laid this thing out with the different photos and what word processing, word processor were you using, all that kind of nitty gritty detail that folks at home might be interested in.
I used a regular Word program, and the file print preview is the most valuable command to me.
Now what is that, file print preview?
When you're using the Word program, going to the file icon and then popping on the print preview gives you a picture of the layout of that page. you need to set up your pages and set up your word program margins and other parameters of your page according to what your publishing company recommends. So getting on whatever publishing company that you're planning to use, getting on their website and finding out all of the guidelines, all of the parameters that they want you to follow. For instance, what size margins, how much of a header or footer, how they want them numbered, the pages numbered, all of those types of things have to follow the publisher's guidelines. Laying out your pages so that they meet those guidelines assures you that when you get your final product, you don't have a picture half on one page and half on the next page. So you need to check that, print it out, the size that you're planning on printing it with the publisher to see what the layout's going to do. You also will always have the option, I'm assuming most often with all companies, to have a proof copy sent to you where last-minute changes can be made, and don't skip that portion. It's real tempting to go ahead and order 50, 100, or 500 copies as soon as it becomes available to you through the publishing company. However, if you skip that proof copy, that galley copy, and don't go through it with a fine-tooth comb, you may come to regret that at a later stage. So you want to do as much editing, as much proofing as you possibly can before you release that book to the public, before it's placed on some of the major booksellers on the net and offered to friend, foe, and families.
Well, that's great. Well, we've got about 2 minutes left here in studio. So I guess a couple of things that come to mind as I'm listening to you guys speak about different kind of self-publishing options is first that self-publishing has changed dramatically. If you go back 10 or 15 years ago, right, you know, the way that self-publishing was done then was you would order 500 or 1,000 copies of a book. They would come to your house, you know, shipped via UPS in boxes, and then you had to store those books somewhere and actually sell them one by one by one. But now with Richard, Christy, and Edith's books, these modern self-publishing companies really do actually print their books one at a time. Now you can order 50 or 100, but they're printed one at a time. In the remaining, let's say, minute that we have here, what advice would you give, Richard, to somebody who is making that decision? It sounds like you got to first decide whether you're going to self-publish or traditionally publish. Then you got to decide which self-publisher you're going to go with, and then you need to know their guidelines. But what advice would you give to somebody who's on that fence deciding what to do with their book?
I think I would advise, first of all, make your manuscript as bulletproof, as good as you can, because once you send it into the publisher, it's going to cost you to make any changes. So get it as good as you can, edit it, show it to your friends, get feedback, and keep your fingers crossed.
Well, that's great. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in today. I am your host, Stacey Cochran, and I'd like to thank Richard Triebe, Christy Judah, and Edith Edwards, and I'm hoping everybody watching this is going to run out and buy a copy of their books. I'm Stacey Cochran for all of us here at RTN Channel 10. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you.